Hey legends, what's up? It's Darkmech here from Big Dumb Gaming and welcome back to another video. So the Mage Tower's been out for almost on 2 weeks now, and I have been slamming out guides in an effort to try and help as many people as I can who are struggling get these challenges completed. And now that I've kind of achieved everything that I wanted to around that, I thought I'd make a video with my thoughts around the tank rankings and around the Mage Tower, just from my point of view. So just give my thoughts on how I felt tuning was, improvements I would have liked to have seen Blizzard make, and just things I think that were really missed opportunities. So I'm going to start off with my rankings for the tanks. Now keep in mind, before you start yelling at your screen, that these are my opinions and thoughts around what I felt the difficulty curve was to me. And I think there's going to be loads of factors that personalize this for everyone. And that's things like how comfortable you were on a particular class, if you played it before, you know, what order you did the tanks in through the fight. Like obviously as you get to tank 5 and 6, you've done the fight already 4 or 5 times. So you're very comfortable with the mechanics of the fight. And I think that has a large impact on it. So just keep that in mind as I'm giving you my rankings. We're all going to have different takes, very much like we all have assholes, we all have opinions. Just don't eat mine. Okay, so the order in which I completed the tank challenges was Guardian Druid was first, then Blood DK, then Prot Warrior, Prot Paladin, Brewmaster, and I finished it off with Vengeance Demon Hunter. So let's get into my rankings for these. I'm going to start with easiest to hardest, and number 6, the easiest, is Vengeance Demon Hunter. Now this one took me 2 attempts, and I don't think it's a big surprise to see it here on the list. Vengeance Demon Hunter's kit is so well suited to this encounter, it almost trivializes it. Your ability to glide down after any misplays around Infernals or Eyes basically takes 2 of the most dangerous misplayed mechanics out of the encounter, especially in phase 2 when there's a lot going on. Not having to worry about infernal knockbacks is huge. Quicken Sigils allows you the ability to rotate Sigil of Misery and Sigil of Silence on every single Nether Horror Netherstorm cast, which was huge in locking them down. You had the ability to imprison Varus in phase 1 when leaving Aura of Decay to drop your stacks and to just reduce the amount of mind rend damage you were taking. And then Last Resort offered you the ability to either misplay an Annihilate or put it in your cooldown order to take an Annihilate. So Vengeance Demon Hunter, super fantastic toolkit for this. I give it the easiest at number 6. Number 5 was the Protection Paladin, and this took 10 attempts for me. Now, I'm putting Protection Paladin at number 5, and I'm not somebody who plays Protection Paladin a lot. I'm a very basic bitch when it comes to being a Soldier of the Light. And I didn't know what the class could handle, how it really worked and flowed, and it took me a little bit to get used to that. The big part was finding out in phase 2 just how much I could delay Annihilates with Hand of Justice being spec'd into Fist of Justice. It basically meant that I had Hodge up every 20 to 30 seconds, which was huge in phase 2. Now Paladin obviously suffers on the mobility front, but otherwise I thought it had a really good toolkit for phase 2 in handling Annihilates. It's self-sustain, Hodge as I mentioned in delaying Annihilates. It really just didn't feel too bad, and I feel like Protection Paladin's pretty fair at number 5. Number 4 was Brewmaster Monk, and this one took me 6 attempts, and it had been a while between drinks for me on Brewmaster. Shut up. So I was pretty rusty around my bindings on Brewmaster and just sort of being really comfortable on it. But Statue of the Black Ox basically trivialized phase 1 and 2 Nether Horrors. That was absolutely insane, and a lot of people have deaths due to Nether Horrors getting to Valen, going a Netherstorm, and then nuking him down. You can pop a statue down here, negates the whole thing. You can pop a Transcendence down near Valen and get back to him really quickly. So there was a lot of things that made this quite simple. Phase 1 on the Brewmaster was very long in comparison to the other tanks, so you had to mechanically hold it together a little bit longer. Phase 2, there just didn't feel like there was a lot sort of to the Brewmaster. You could stagger both Annihilate 1 and 2, Dampen Harm 3, and then Fort Brew Celestial Brew number 4. So it didn't seem as intricate as the other ones. And yeah, I think 4 is a pretty good spot for Brewmaster Monk. Number 3 on the list for me was the Protection Warrior, and this one took me 7 attempts, and I was honestly a little bit torn about where to put Protection Warrior. If I'm honest, I kind of found Brewmaster harder than Protection Warrior, but Protection Warrior took me 1 more attempt, so I have put it above Brewmaster, and I also think it's a little bit more of a popular consensus that Brewmaster was one of the easier ones, whereas some people have struggled on Prot Warrior. I used to play a Prot Warrior, so I felt fairly comfortable on the class anytime I go back to it. Phase 1 just felt fairly trivial on the Prot Warrior. Super mobile, double time heroic leap. You can proc victory rushes off eyes and nether horrors. The eyes are susceptible to all forms of damage, you know, not just magic damage and things like that. So that made that really easy. You basically had on-demand healing when you needed it through victory rush. Cruel in phase 2, being able to spell reflect Twisted Reflection gave you that added survivability. You have fairly enormous damage through your execute phase. You have a really good toolkit for dealing with annihilates. I felt Prot Warrior was fairly well set up for this, and I've put it at number 3. Number 2 for me was the Blood Death Knight, and this took me 11 attempts pre-nerf. So that was pre-nerf to Cruel's health, and when the Nether Horrors still chased you, casting Nether Storm. So there's my E-Peen, and there's your face. No, look, it made the fight a little bit more mechanically complex, but honestly, it realistically wasn't that bad. I'm really comfortable playing my Blood DK, so I didn't think it was that bad, and I really actually enjoyed the added attention pre-nerf. But its toolkit's set up really well for handling it regardless. I just think if you weren't as comfortable on the DK, it probably requires a little bit more execution, and you've obviously got a lacking of mobility on the class. But you have loads of control. In phase 1, Asphyxiate, you've got an ranged shutdown tool for Mind Rends or Drain Life. You've got Mind Freeze, which again, a ranged interrupt is really, really handy outside of Aura of Decay. You know, everything pretty much had things to shut down outside of Aura of Decay, but, you know, that was a really nice thing, having 2. D&D talented for Grip of the Dead meant that when the ads were moving, you just put a D&D down, you got a 90% slow straight away, and you could move away while the ads were casting. It also slowed the Infernals. In phase 2, dealing with Cruel's Annihilates was also pretty cruisy. Again, though, it did come down to resource management and being comfortable. So, but you did have multiple ways. So like an example would have been first Annihilate Rune Tap, second Annihilate Rune Tap, third Annihilate, Vampiric Blood Rune Tap, fourth Icebound Fortitude Rune Tap. And then if you were spec'd into Purgatory, you could also take Purgatory for an Annihilate and then run into an Orb to get rid of Purgatory. So DK had a really, really solid kit for dealing with this challenge. It just, I guess, depended on how comfortable you were with managing your resources around the DK and no mobility. Number 1 for me was the Guardian Druid, the hardest of the bunch. Guardian Druid, 73, was either 73 or 75 attempts pre-nerf. And I had an extraordinary amount of wipes for about 5 or 6 hours on stream, I think it was, on night 1, trying to get this done. And it was beyond tilting, but I loved every second of it. I felt like this fight was tuned so well. You had to be spot on in phase 2 to kill Cruel. Your Annihilate management in phase 2 had to be spot on to kill Cruel, and I had a number of 1 to 3% wipes with like there was one 3% wipe where I had 2 orbs up, so I probably could have killed it like 40 pulls earlier. I couldn't execute it. I turned into a spaghetti head and I couldn't do it. And I loved that about the fight. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Now, there's been a lot of things that have sort of come out through this. Like in phase 1 on the Druid challenge, if you're really comfortable on a Boomy, you can really blitz through that phase 1 into phase 2 and only have sort of 1 Infernal up. I am not a great Druid, no word of lie, especially outside of bear form. I'm not too knowledgeable around Boomy. So I kind of didn't have as much freedom around doing that. I certainly tried, but not as good as some of the other people. but you could get through phase 1 really quickly in doing that. There was also varied successes between taking Galactic Guardian and Incarn, but all in all, it was a really, really well-tuned challenge when it came out. In-cap Roar was extremely powerful against the Nether Horrors, and you had to time that in-cap Roar as the Nether Storm was going off to avoid the recast, and again that brought another really cool layer of complexity to the challenge, or you would pretty much have your NPCs blown up, or you could get blown up. There was a lot of people that managed to get this done really quickly. Sang from Limit was one of them. Pumps from Honestly managed to pew this with no drums in one pull. But I think a lot of us that play it at a more normal person level, we were really happy with how this challenge was sitting and the accomplishment of when you managed to achieve it. So Guardian Druid for me, number 1, and I thought when it came out, it was really, really cool. It felt really special to tick that one off. Okay, so they're my rankings. Let's get into the verbal diarrhea section of this, my thoughts on the Mage Tower. So, when it was announced the Mage Tower was coming back, I was super excited, okay? Some of the most fun I've had in WoW, the things that push you outside of your comfort zone, this was it, and it was always amazing. I think, though, the tower contained a lot of rose-colored memories around its difficulty setting. I think a lot of the player base since Legion has substantially grown in its skill level as well. I know I certainly have when I go back and look at some of my old Mage Tower videos. I also think that there are separate groups when you are starting to talk about this tower. Now, one group completed the tower on the first few cycles of Legion. The other group completed it at the end of Legion with supercharged artifacts, and then there was another group that never played Legion at all and had no idea what to expect. And then what happened when the tower launched was all 3 of those groups collided in what can only be described as a cosmic clusterfuck. Now, I really wanted the tower to be this new point of prestige. The same challenges brought forward into today's difficulty and player standings and the expectation of what difficult actually is. For me, I think we need to go back to being able to normalize wiping, and it's something I put out on Twitter on day 1, and I was really happy with that. Normalize wiping. I think it needs to be okay for something to take you a week to achieve, or 300 pulls, and then even then you may still not achieve it, and that is okay. Just because you pay a monthly subscription does not mean that you should just get everything handed to you. It doesn't mean that Joe Cruelly Cruel should be a 6-pull Charlie. That's not realistic. A game should be allowed to have things that are difficult, that you have to work towards. Now, I'm a boomer, so excuse this reference, but it's the only thing I could think of. If you had one of the old consoles back in the day, like a Nintendo or a SNES, right, and you had Battletoads or Ninja Shadow Warriors, when you hit a level that was too hard, you didn't get on the phone, you didn't have a mobile, you didn't get on your fucking ring and dial Nintendo and say, "Oi, I need Battletoads 2.0, the Nerf fuckhole version, if you could please release it." You sucked it up, you got on your beanbag, you asked your mum for a Milo, and you just kept playing the level till you passed it. Or you moved on with your life. And the same goes for the Mage Tower, in my opinion. I, of course, am not saying that broken things should not be fixed. If there is something that is not behaving the way that it's intended, or it's completely arseholed, then it should be fixed. I'm not talking about trying to lock people out of content or lock it to the top 0.1%. If that's the kind of, percentage that's completing it, then it probably is too hard. But I think it's still okay to start off at that level. I just think the way that the community, or we'll call it the vocal community, responded to the Mage Tower was pretty appalling. I watched some content creators who obviously have a voice doing the tank challenge, screaming, ranting and raving that it was overtuned. And while they were doing this, they were in feral form attacking an infernal. Now, do you know why you think this? It's because you're doing the challenge wrong, you wanker. So if the tower's been out for 4 hours and you're doing the challenge wrong, ranting and raving to your audience that it's overtuned and it's broken and Blizzard are a bunch of fuckheads, it doesn't set you in a good light, and it doesn't then take those people who take your word as gospel and go out with it. It just doesn't set up for a very good time. Relax, enjoy the process, and just get better. Now, I'm not saying that Blizzard had zero part in this at all and it's just the community being whingers, okay? Things started out pretty poorly with the Mage Tower only being available for 1 day of testing and feedback. Couple that along with the difficulty that we saw on PTR and guides were made around to the difficulty that we received on live, it was a pretty big shock, and I didn't mind that, but I think a lot of people had already set their expectations around what they were expecting the tower to be, and when that didn't deliver and was different, it was a very, very rude shock. What should have happened was when they decided the PTR was too easy, another round of testing should have gone out. And I think that would have prepared the community much better for what was to come, and it would have allowed certain things to be fixed and tuned before we got to live. To me, one of the most upsetting factors around this and over week 1 was having people come into chat or in YouTube comments saying, I did it, 300 wipes, it's finally mine, I can't thank you enough, I'm so proud of myself, da-da-da-da-da. And that's so awesome. That's what you want in a game. That's real achievement. That's real satisfaction. And then 6 hours later, a blue post goes out, the Cruel's health's been nerfed by 9%, the Nether Horrors don't cast Netherstorm anymore or recast it or whatever the fuck they've done to the ads that made me remake the guide 3 times. And it's a huge kick in the balls to those players who just spent 12 hours to wake up and find out that they could have just done it today. I don't think that's very good. I don't think that creates a good experience. Secondly, abuse in the tower. So Soul Trap. I would love to see the figures around the amount of people that completed their challenge in the first couple of days using Soul Trap. Now, as soon as I got told about this, I went and tested it and I reported it straight away. Yeah, I'm a narc. If you didn't know, using a Soul Trap on Varus would stop him from spawning an Aura of Decay. No Aura of Decay in Phase 1. And it worked for every single tank class. So it means that Phase 1 was a complete tank and spank. And I would be astonished to find out how many people use that to get their achievement. Which is sad. But again, it's not necessarily their fault. The next issue that sprang to life was Blizzard's lack of foresight around gearing. Now, gearing templates should have been used for the Mage Towers. There would have been no time walking sets for people to complain about or to be excluded from if they didn't play previous expansions. Now, getting a time walking set, as I've said on every single guide, is not hard. You go to Siege of Orgrimmar, you get 12 sockets out of one run, basically, and you fill it with gem sockets, okay? You go to Emerald Nightmare, you do the first boss, and you get a Ravaged Seed Pod. Things like that. It's not hard to do. It takes a little bit of effort, but it's not hard. However, there are certain things that you just can't obtain anymore, like the Garrosh heirloom weapons or the WOD trinkets, which are especially valuable in the tank challenge with the Grondtooth War Horn or the Infallible Tracking Charm. So with gear sets, all of this wouldn't have been an issue. Every single person doing the tower would have been on an equal footing. The only problem with that would have been the only person you could have then blamed for not completing the tower would have been yourself. And we know how that affects some people. However, outside of that, it would have made the challenges far easier to tune because everyone's got the same gear. So then you're just moving the slider depending on that. You're not having to worry about who's got a time walking set, who's using an heirloom trinket, who's using an heirloom weapon, who's using old Crusader enchants, yada, yada, yada. You see where I'm going? It just becomes a giant fucking clusterfuck that you could have avoided. Along with this, it also wouldn't have had the huge impact we've seen on the time walking community. Now, I do honestly feel really sorry for the time walking community. This is a group of people who have spent an enormous amount of time, developed resources, research, and had developed a huge passion for this form of content and this style, to see their enchants, gems, and items nerfed into the ground due to this one facet of content that could have been sold with gear sets again. The Mage Tower to me represents a lot of missed opportunities. Players love solo content, and arguably, Mage Towers have been some of the most successful content we've ever seen come into World of Warcraft. It's an achievement. It's something you've done as an individual player that then you show off to the world. You don't need a team, you don't need a raid group. It's something you did based on your own skill. And that's something Blizzard failed to capitalize on, I think. With Torghast, you could have incorporated the Mage Tower into Torghast quite easily, a new Mage Tower. Now, in 9.2, we've got the Torghast boss wings coming, and maybe this is what Blizzard are thinking with this. But Torghast is a giant fucking tower, right? Mage Tower is a tower. Torghast has layers and floors. You could have just made new Mage style encounters and put them into Torghast and kept adding throughout the whole expansion. Then you could have gone further with this. Leaderboards could have been introduced for the quickest clears for those, for those challenge modes on those floors and things like that. Titles could have been added, MOG rewards, mount rewards. The list goes on. It's a huge thing that could have been capitalized on by Blizzard here. We saw a huge success in community competition when we had leaderboards for servers with challenge modes. Only this is a solo adventure, and people love playing, this sounds weird, MMOs solo. The MO cast breaking World of Warcraft Round 2 also brought up a really, really good suggestion. Being able to queue into specific challenges as any spec. This just adds more content. If you put leaderboards in and you add any spec being able to go into any challenge, you've now got more flair, more fun, more combinations, and then you've got more people chasing leaderboards across 36 specs in a number of different challenges. That is huge. Now, I know I've gone on a bit of a rant here, and I'm honestly, despite what it may sound like, I'm really happy the Mage Tower came back. I had a blast doing these again. I just wish it had have been done with a little more polish and a little more thought around it. I'm really glad to have seen new rewards come in. I'm glad to have seen another chance for people that didn't get a chance to get the werebear, a chance to get the fellbear, because it looks absolutely amazing. I would have liked spec rewards though. I'm not a big fan of the one-size-fits-all class reward outside the Guardian Druid, of course, where you had to do the tank challenge to get the bear. I think having spec rewards, it challenges people to play their spec and their spec well in that challenge, versus a class reward where if one of your specs is the easiest challenge and one of your specs that you play, for example, might be the hardest, you're going to go and learn the other spec you don't play that's the easiest one because it's the path of least resistance. It's human nature. And I don't think that's a really good thing to try and breed through. I'm all for encouraging people to play other specs, which would have been done through spec rewards rather than class rewards split across the specs. So that's it from me. Really keen to hear your thoughts, guys. Let me know in the comments below. Tank rankings, my thoughts around the Mage Tower. Hit me with whatever you've got. Thank you very much for checking out the video. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. See you guys.